What happens when a billionaire CEO decides to visit his own store in disguise, only to discover something that will shake him to his core? Sometimes the most powerful people in the world are completely blind to what's happening right under their noses. This is the story of Marcus Wellington, a man who built an empire but lost sight of his humanity along the way. What he discovered in a single afternoon would not only change one employee's life forever, but force him to confront the ugly truth about the company he thought he knew. Some secrets are worth millions. Others are worth so much more. Get ready for a story that will make you question everything you think you know about power, privilege, and what it truly means to lead. Because sometimes the most important lessons come from the most unexpected places, and the people we overlook might be the ones with the most to teach us. Marcus Wellington adjusted the worn baseball cap on his head and pulled the sleeves of his faded jacket down slightly. At 52, he was worth $3 billion and owned a chain of over 200 grocery stores across the country. But today, nobody would recognize him as he walked through the automatic doors of Wellington Market's location number 127 in downtown Detroit. The store looked exactly like every other Wellington Market from the outside, with its signature green and white color scheme and the familiar logo that had become a household name across America. Marcus had built this empire from a single corner store that his grandmother had left him 25 years ago. Now, Wellington Markets employed over 30,000 people and served millions of customers every week. But Marcus had a problem. For months, he had been receiving complaints from customers about poor service, rude employees, and stores that looked run down. The board of directors was breathing down his neck, demanding answers and threatening to replace him if things didn't improve. His assistant had been showing him reports and statistics, but Marcus knew that numbers on paper never told the whole story. That's why he was here today, dressed like an ordinary customer, ready to see what was really happening in his stores. He had done this before at a few locations, but always in the wealthy suburbs where everything seemed to run smoothly. Today was different. He had chosen this Detroit location specifically because it was in one of the poorest neighborhoods his company served, and the customer complaint numbers from this store were among the highest in the entire chain. As Marcus walked through the entrance, the first thing he noticed was how different this store felt compared to the ones in the suburbs. The lighting seemed dimmer, though he couldn't tell if that was intentional or if some of the bulbs had burned out and not been replaced. The floors, while clean, showed signs of heavy wear and tear. Several of the shopping carts near the entrance had wobbly wheels or broken handles, and Marcus made a mental note to speak with the store manager about replacing them. The produce section caught his attention immediately, but not in a good way. While the fruits and vegetables appeared fresh, the selection was noticeably smaller than what he was used to seeing in other Wellington markets. Many of the shelves that should have been full of organic options were either empty or filled with lower-priced conventional produce. Marcus frowned as he picked up an apple and examined it. The quality was fine, but he knew that customers in this neighborhood deserved the same choices that were available in wealthier areas. As he made his way through the store, Marcus began to notice other differences. The pharmacy section, which was usually bustling with activity in suburban locations, had a long line of customers waiting with only one pharmacist on duty. Several elderly customers looked frustrated as they waited, and Marcus could see why. The wait time appeared to be at least 30 minutes, which was completely unacceptable by company standards. The clothing section, which had been added to Wellington Markets 3 years ago as part of Marcus's strategy to compete with larger retailers, looked sparse and disorganized. Racks that should have been full of seasonal items were half empty, and what clothes were available seemed to be mostly generic brands rather than the name brand options that other stores carried. Marcus wondered if this was a supply chain issue or a deliberate decision by corporate to stock different inventory based on the neighborhood's income level. But it was when he reached the checkout area that Marcus really began to understand why this store was receiving so many complaints. There were 12 checkout lanes, but only 4 were open despite the fact that it was mid-afternoon on a Saturday, typically one of the busiest times of the week. The lines were long, and customers looked irritated as they waited with their groceries. Marcus joined the shortest line and found himself behind a mother with 3 young children who were getting restless as they waited. The woman kept checking her phone and sighing, clearly frustrated with how long the process was taking. In front of her, an elderly man was having trouble reaching his wallet, and Marcus could see the cashier tapping her fingers impatiently on the counter. As Marcus got closer to the front of the line, he started paying attention to the cashier who would be helping him. She appeared to be in her mid-20s with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and tired eyes that suggested she had been working for hours. But what immediately caught his attention was her left arm, which was in a cast from her wrist to just below her elbow. Despite her obvious injury, she was working quickly and efficiently, scanning items with her right hand while using her casted arm to steady packages and bags. Marcus noticed that she winced slightly every time she had to use her injured arm, but she never slowed down or complained. When customers spoke to her, she responded politely and professionally, even when they were rude or impatient. The elderly man in front of Marcus was having trouble counting out exact change, and Marcus watched as the cashier waited patiently without showing any sign of annoyance. When a man apologized for taking so long, she smiled and told him not to worry about it, that she had all the time in the world. Marcus was impressed by her kindness, especially since he could see that her arm was clearly causing her discomfort. When it was finally Marcus's turn, he placed his small basket of items on the counter and got his first good look at the cashier's name tag, which read Sarah. As she began scanning his items, he noticed that her movements were even more careful and deliberate than he had first thought. She was definitely in pain, but she was doing everything possible to hide it and continue doing her job properly. "Did you find everything you needed today?" Sarah asked with a smile that seemed genuine despite the obvious exhaustion in her eyes. "I did. Thank you," Marcus replied, studying her face more closely. There was something about her demeanor that struck him as unusual. Most cashiers, especially ones who were clearly working while injured, would show some sign of frustration or would rush through the transaction to get to the next customer. But Sarah was taking her time, making sure each item was scanned correctly and that his groceries were packed properly. "That'll be $37.48, she said, and Marcus handed her his credit card. As she processed the payment, he found himself wondering about her story. How had she broken her arm? And more importantly, why was she working with such an obvious injury? "Have a great rest of your day," Sarah said as she handed him his receipt and bags. "And thank you for choosing Wellington Markets." "Thank you," Marcus replied, but instead of leaving immediately, he found himself hesitating. Something about the entire situation didn't sit right with him. He had been in retail for over 2 decades, and he knew that most companies had policies about employees working while injured, especially when the injury was severe enough to require a cast. As he walked toward the exit, Marcus glanced back at Sarah's checkout lane. The line behind her was still long, and she was already helping the next customer with the same patience and professionalism she had shown him. But he could see that she was struggling more now, probably because the afternoon rush was taking its toll on her injured arm. Marcus made a decision. Instead of leaving the store, he found an empty chair in the small seating area near the customer service desk and sat down where he could observe the checkout area without being obvious about it. He pulled out his phone and pretended to be checking emails, but his attention was focused entirely on Sarah and the other employees. What he saw over the next hour made him increasingly uncomfortable. Sarah never took a break, despite the fact that she was clearly in pain and had been working for what appeared to be an extended period. The other cashiers rotated in and out for their breaks, but Sarah remained at her station, continuing to help customer after customer with the same level of care and attention. Around 4 o'clock, Marcus noticed a man in a white dress shirt and tie approaching Sarah's checkout lane. Based on his appearance and the way other employees deferred to him, Marcus assumed this was either the store manager or an assistant manager. But instead of checking on Sarah's well-being or offering her a break, the man seemed to be speaking to her in a stern tone. Marcus couldn't hear what was being said, but he could see Sarah's body language change. Her shoulders tensed, and she nodded quickly several times as the man spoke. When he walked away, Sarah looked down at her cast for a moment before taking a deep breath and continuing with her work. But Marcus could tell that whatever had been said had upset her. This was not the Wellington markets that Marcus thought he was running. This was not the company culture he believed he had created. And this was definitely not how he wanted his employees to be treated, especially employees who were clearly going above and beyond despite personal challenges. Marcus stood up and walked back towards Sarah's checkout lane, but this time he had a different purpose. He wasn't just observing anymore. He was investigating. And what he was about to discover would shake his understanding of his own company to its core. Marcus approached the customer service desk, where a young employee named Kevin was helping an elderly woman return a defective toaster. He waited patiently until the transaction was complete, then stepped forward with what he hoped looked like a casual customer inquiry. "Excuse me," Marcus said to Kevin. "I was just checking out with the young lady over there with the cast on her arm, and I couldn't help but notice she seemed to be in some discomfort. Is she okay?" Kevin glanced over at Sarah's checkout lane and then back at Marcus. For a moment, the young man seemed unsure about how to respond, as if he was trying to decide whether this customer's question was genuine concern or just nosiness. "Oh, Sarah? Yeah, she's tough," Kevin said carefully. "She broke her arm pretty bad about 6 weeks ago, but she's been coming to work anyway. Management says as long as she can do the job, she can keep working." "6 weeks?" Marcus asked, trying to keep his voice neutral despite the concern that was growing in his chest. "That seems like a long time to be working with a broken arm. Doesn't the company have some kind of injury leave policy?" Kevin looked around nervously before leaning closer to Marcus and lowering his voice. "Look, I'm not supposed to talk about employee stuff with customers, but Sarah's situation is complicated. She really needs this job, you know? Like, really needs it. And taking time off isn't really an option for her." "What do you mean it's not an option?" Marcus pressed, though he was careful to maintain his cover as just a concerned customer. "Well," Kevin hesitated again, then seemed to decide that sharing Sarah's story might actually help her somehow. "She's got this sick kid at home. Her daughter has some kind of medical condition that requires expensive treatments, and Sarah's insurance through Wellington only covers part of it. She can't afford to miss work because she needs every paycheck, and she can't afford to lose her job because she needs the insurance." Marcus felt his stomach drop. This was exactly the kind of situation that his company's employee assistance programs were supposed to handle. Wellington Markets offered family medical leave, disability benefits, and emergency financial assistance for employees facing hardships. The fact that Sarah apparently didn't know about these programs, or worse, had been denied access to them, suggested that something was seriously wrong with how this store was being managed. "That's terrible," Marcus said, and he meant it. "Hasn't anyone from management tried to help her? I mean, working with a broken arm for 6 weeks while dealing with a sick child at home, that can't be sustainable." Kevin's expression darkened slightly. "Help her? Mr. Rodriguez, the store manager, is just happy that she's showing up for work. He's always going on about how Sarah is proof that people can work through anything if they really want to. He uses her as an example during staff meetings, talking about how dedicated she is and how other employees should be more like her." This information hit Marcus like a physical blow. The idea that his store manager was using Sarah's desperate situation as a motivational tool for other employees was beyond inappropriate. It suggested a complete lack of understanding about proper management practices and basic human compassion. "And Sarah's okay with that?" Marcus asked. "Being used as an example, I mean. I don't think she has much choice," Kevin replied. "She needs this job too much to complain about anything. Plus, Mr. Rodriguez has made it pretty clear that employees who create problems don't last long here. Sarah's smart enough to keep her head down and just do her work." Marcus thanked Kevin and walked away, but his mind was racing. Everything he was learning painted a picture of a workplace culture that was the complete opposite of what Wellington Markets was supposed to represent. His company's official policies emphasized employee well-being, family support, and creating a positive work environment. But apparently, those policies weren't being implemented at the store level, at least not here. He decided to approach the situation more directly. Marcus bought a bottle of water from the small refrigerated section near the pharmacy and got in Sarah's line again. This time, he planned to engage her in conversation and see if he could learn more about her situation without revealing who he was. When he reached the front of the line, Sarah looked up with the same professional smile she had given him earlier. If she recognized him from his previous transaction, she didn't show it. "Back again?" she asked pleasantly as she scanned his water bottle. "I forgot to grab a drink earlier," Marcus said. "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I noticed you're working with a broken arm. That must be challenging." Sarah's smile faltered slightly, and Marcus could see a flash of worry in her eyes, as if she was concerned that a customer complaint about her injury might get her in trouble. "It's not too bad," she said quickly. "I can handle everything fine. The cast actually makes me more careful, so I'm probably less likely to make mistakes." The way she rushed to defend her ability to work told Marcus everything he needed to know about the pressure she was under. She was terrified of giving anyone a reason to question her job performance. "I wasn't complaining," Marcus said gently. "Actually, I was impressed by how well you're managing everything. I just wondered if you're getting the support you need from your employer. Most companies have programs to help employees who get injured." Sarah glanced around nervously before processing his payment. "Wellington Markets has been very understanding," she said in a tone that sounded rehearsed. "As long as I can do my job, they're letting me keep working." "And do you want to keep working?" Marcus asked. "I mean, wouldn't it be easier to take some time off to heal?" For a moment, Sarah's professional mask slipped, and Marcus saw a glimpse of the exhaustion and stress she was carrying. "Time off it's not really an option for me right now," she said quietly. "I have responsibilities at home that require me to keep working." "What kind of responsibilities?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer based on his conversation with Kevin. Sarah hesitated, clearly debating whether to share personal information with a customer. But something about Marcus's manner seemed to put her at ease, and she found herself opening up slightly. "My daughter has leukemia," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "She's 8 years old, and she needs treatments that are really expensive. My insurance covers some of it, but there's still a lot of costs that I have to pay out of pocket. Missing work isn't an option because I need every dollar I can earn, and losing my job would mean losing my insurance, which would be devastating for Emma." Marcus felt his heart break as he listened to Sarah's story. Here was a single mother working through significant physical pain to ensure her sick daughter could receive medical treatment. And instead of receiving support from her employer, she was being used as an example of dedication by a manager who clearly didn't understand the gravity of her situation. "That's incredibly difficult," Marcus said. "You're obviously a very dedicated mother. But surely your employer has resources to help in situations like this?" Most large companies have employee assistance programs or emergency fund for families dealing with medical crises. Sarah looked confused. "I don't know anything about programs like that. When I broke my arm, Mr. Rodriguez just asked if I could still work. When I said yes, he said that was great and that he was proud of my work ethic. Nobody mentioned any kind of assistance or programs." This was the confirmation Marcus needed. Sarah wasn't just unaware of the company's employee benefits. She was actively being kept in the dark about them by a manager who either didn't know about them himself or was deliberately withholding the information. Either scenario was unacceptable. "Have you ever spoken to anyone in corporate HR?" Marcus asked. Sometimes store managers aren't fully informed about all the programs that are available to employees. "Oh no," Sarah said, looking almost frightened by the suggestion. "I wouldn't want to go over Mr. Rodriguez's head. He's made it clear that he doesn't appreciate employees who create complications or draw attention from corporate. I just try to do my job and stay out of trouble." Marcus realized that Sarah was trapped in a situation where she was too afraid to seek help that was rightfully available to her, and too desperate to risk losing her job by advocating for herself. Meanwhile, her manager was either ignorant of company policies or was deliberately creating a culture of fear that prevented employees from accessing the resources they needed. As Sarah handed him his receipt, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. "Sarah," he said, "I think you should know that you have more options than you realize. Large companies like Wellington Markets are required by law to provide certain protections and benefits to employees in your situation. You shouldn't have to choose between your health and your daughter's medical care. Sarah looked puzzled by his comment, but before she could respond, Marcus saw the store manager approaching. He recognized the man from earlier as the one who had spoken sternly to Sarah during her shift. This had to be Mr. Rodriguez. "Is there a problem here?" Rodriguez asked, looking suspiciously between Marcus and Sarah. "Sarah, is this customer complaining about something?" "No, sir," Sarah said quickly. "He was just making conversation while I processed his purchase." Rodriguez studied Marcus for a moment, and Marcus could see the man sizing him up. In his disguise of worn clothes and a baseball cap, Marcus knew he looked like just another customer, but there was something in Rodriguez's manner that suggested he was naturally suspicious of anyone who spent too much time talking to his employees. "Well, we try to keep the lines moving efficiently," Rodriguez said with false friendliness. "Sarah, remember that customer service includes processing transactions quickly, not having extended conversations." "Yes, sir," Sarah replied, and Marcus could see the shame and embarrassment in her face as she was reprimanded in front of a customer. This was the final straw for Marcus. He had seen enough to know that everything he believed about his company culture was wrong, at least at this location. Sarah was being exploited, intimidated, and denied access to benefits that could change her life. And it was happening under the supervision of a manager who seemed more concerned with maintaining authority than supporting his employees. Marcus left the store, but he wasn't going home. Instead, he sat in his car in the parking lot and made a phone call that would set in motion a chain of events that would expose the truth about what was really happening in his company. And Sarah, who had no idea that she had just served the CEO of Wellington Markets, was about to discover that sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places. Marcus sat in his car outside the Wellington Market for 20 minutes, making phone calls and taking notes. His first call was to Jennifer Walsh, his director of human resources, whom he reached on her personal cell phone, despite it being a Saturday. "Jennifer, I need you to pull the employee file for a cashier named Sarah at location 127 in Detroit. I also need a complete review of all employee assistance program requests from that store for the past year, and I want to know who the HR representative is for that location." "Marcus, is everything okay?" Jennifer asked, clearly surprised to be getting a call from the CEO on the weekend. "Did something happen?" "Something's happening right now," Marcus replied grimly. "I'm sitting outside one of our stores watching an employee with a broken arm work a full shift while caring for a daughter with leukemia, and apparently nobody in management has bothered to inform her about any of the benefits or assistance programs we offer. I want to know why." That shouldn't be possible," Jennifer said, and Marcus could hear her moving around, probably getting to her computer. Every store manager is required to inform employees about available programs, especially in cases of family medical emergencies or workplace injuries. And every employee receives a benefits handbook during orientation that outlines everything. Well, either this employee never received that information or it's being deliberately withheld from her, Marcus said. "I want answers, and I want them Monday morning. Set up a meeting with the district manager for this region and give me everything you can find about the management practices at this location." After ending the call with Jennifer, Marcus made his second call to David Kim, the company's chief operating officer. David was responsible for overseeing all store operations and ensuring that company policies were being implemented consistently across all locations. "David, I'm at the Detroit location on Corktown Avenue, and I'm seeing some things that concern me. When was the last time someone from corporate did a management audit at this store?" "Let me check," David said, and Marcus could hear him typing. "According to our records, location 127 had a routine operational audit 6 months ago. Everything was marked as satisfactory, with above-average customer satisfaction scores and good financial performance." "Who conducted that audit?" Marcus asked. "Regional Manager Tom Harrison. He's been with the company for 8 years and oversees 12 stores in the Detroit metro area. His reports have always been thorough and accurate." Marcus made a note to speak with Tom Harrison personally. If the regional manager had given this store a satisfactory rating while employees were being denied access to basic benefits and working under intimidating management, then either the audit process was flawed or Tom wasn't doing his job properly. I want you to schedule an unannounced audit of this location for first thing Monday morning, Marcus told David. Don't give them any advance notice. Just show up and conduct a complete review of their employee relations practices, benefit program implementation, and management procedures. Consider it done, David replied. But, Marcus, what exactly did you see that has you so concerned? Marcus explained what he had observed, from Sarah's situation to the store manager's behavior to the apparent lack of knowledge about employee assistance programs. As he spoke, he could hear David's concern growing. This is serious, David said when Marcus finished. If what you're describing is accurate, we could be looking at violations of family medical leave laws, workers' compensation regulations, and our own company policies. Not to mention the human cost of what this employee is going through. Exactly, Marcus said, which is why I want this handled immediately and thoroughly. And, David, I want regular audits implemented at all locations moving forward. Clearly, our current system isn't catching problems like this. Marcus's third call was through his personal assistant, Rebecca, asking her to clear his Monday schedule so he could personally follow up on the situation. Then he sat back in his car and thought about what his next steps should be. Part of him wanted to march back into the store, reveal his identity, and demand immediate changes. But he knew that approach would likely backfire. Rodriguez would probably panic and potentially retaliate against Sarah or other employees who had spoken to him. Instead, Marcus needed to be strategic about how he handled this situation. He decided to spend the rest of the weekend researching Sarah's situation more thoroughly. Using his access to company systems, Marcus was able to pull her employee file remotely from his home computer. What he found made his anger grow even stronger. Sarah Martinez had been employed at Wellington Markets for 3 years. Her performance reviews were consistently excellent, with supervisors noting her reliability, customer service skills, and positive attitude. She had never received a disciplinary action or complaint. Her employment file showed that she was a single mother with one dependent child, and she had elected for the company's family medical insurance plan. But here was the most damning discovery. Sarah's file contained no documentation of any workplace injury, no workers' compensation claim, and no family medical leave request. According to the official records, the company had no knowledge that she had broken her arm or that her daughter was battling leukemia. This meant that either the paperwork had never been filed or it had been deliberately excluded from her official employee record. Marcus also discovered that location 127 had an unusually low rate of employee assistance program usage compared to other stores in the region. In the past year, only 2 employees had applied for emergency financial assistance, and no employees had taken family medical leave. This was statistically impossible for a store with over 60 employees, which suggested that either the information wasn't being shared with staff or employees were being discouraged from applying. On Sunday, Marcus drove back to the store and spent several hours observing from his car during different shifts. He watched employees arrive and leave, noting their interactions with management and their general demeanor. What he saw confirmed his worst fears about the workplace culture at this location. Employees seemed tense and hurried, rarely talking to each other during breaks, and always looking over their shoulders as if they were worried about being watched. When managers were visible, staff members moved more quickly and avoided making eye contact. This was the behavior of people who were afraid of their supervisors, not employees who felt supported and valued. Marcus also noticed that the employee break room, which was visible through windows facing the parking lot, was sparse and uninviting. In most Wellington Markets locations, the break room was designed to be a comfortable space where employees could relax during their time off. But this break room looked more like a storage area with a few folding chairs and tables. On Sunday evening, Marcus made one more phone call, this time to his legal counsel, Patricia Reynolds. He explained the situation and asked her to review the company's potential liability if employees were being denied access to mandated benefits and protections. Marcus, if what you're describing is happening at one store, you need to immediately investigate whether it's happening at other locations, Patricia warned. The legal exposure could be enormous, not to mention the public relations nightmare if this becomes public knowledge. I know, Marcus replied. That's why I'm taking this so seriously. But right now, my primary concern is making sure Sarah gets the help she needs and deserves. Everything else we can deal with afterward. I'd recommend having our employment law specialist conduct a comprehensive review of this situation, Patricia said. And you might want to consider bringing in an outside firm to audit your employee relations practices company-wide. If there are systematic problems, it's better to identify and fix them proactively rather than wait for lawsuits or media attention. Monday morning arrived, and Marcus was at his corporate headquarters by 6 a.m., 2 hours before his usual arrival time. He spent the early morning hours reviewing company policies, employee handbooks, and training materials to ensure he had a complete understanding of what should have been available to Sarah. Wellington Market's Employee Assistance Program was actually quite comprehensive. In addition to standard health insurance, the company offered emergency financial assistance up to $5,000 for employees facing family medical crises. There was paid family medical leave for up to 12 weeks, workers' compensation coverage for all workplace injuries, and employee hardship fund that provided grant for situations exactly like Sarah's. The fact that Sarah was unaware of these programs meant that someone in the management chain was failing in their basic responsibilities, either through incompetence, negligence, or deliberate misconduct. Employees at location 127 were being denied access to benefits that could significantly improve their lives. At 8 a.m., Marcus's phone rang with a call from David Kim, who was already at the Detroit store beginning his unannounced audit. "Marcus, you need to hear this," David said, his voice tense with anger. "I've been here for 30 minutes, and I've already discovered that this store's management has been actively discouraging employees from filing workers' compensation claims or taking family medical leave. The store manager told me that corporate doesn't like it when stores have high benefit usage rates, and that he's been instructed to keep those numbers low." "That's completely false," Marcus said. "We've never given any instruction like that to any manager. In fact, we encourage stores to help employees access all available benefits." "I know that, and you know that, but apparently Rodriguez doesn't know that. Or he's lying about his instructions. Either way, we have a serious problem here." "What else have you found?" Marcus asked. "I pulled the employee schedules, and Sarah Martinez has been working 6 days a week since she broke her arm, often pulling double shifts to cover for other employees who call in sick. She's averaging over 50 hours per week despite her injury. That alone is a violation of our workplace safety policies." Marcus closed his eyes and felt a wave of anger and disappointment wash over him. Sarah wasn't just being denied benefits. She was being exploited and overworked while dealing with both a personal injury and a family medical crisis. This was exactly the kind of situation his company's policies were designed to prevent. "David, I want you to immediately implement the following changes," Marcus said. "First, inform Sarah about all available benefits and assistance programs and fast-track any application she wants to submit. Second, reduce her work schedule to no more than 40 hours per week and ensure she has adequate break time. Third, I want Rodriguez suspended pending a full investigation into his management practices." "Consider it done," David replied. "But, Marcus, there's something else you should know. I spoke with several other employees this morning, and Sarah's situation isn't unique. There are at least 3 other staff members who are dealing with significant personal challenges and apparently don't know about available company resources." This revelation hit Marcus harder than everything else combined. The problems at location 127 weren't isolated to one employee or one manager. There was a systematic failure happening that was affecting multiple families and potentially dozens of employees. As Marcus hung up the phone, he realized that his weekend discovery had uncovered something much larger than he had initially thought. This wasn't just about helping Sarah. though that remained his immediate priority. This was about fundamentally examining how his company operated and ensuring that the values he thought he had built into Wellington markets were actually being practiced at every location. The next few hours would determine not just Sarah's future, but the future of every employee in the Wellington Markets family. And Marcus was determined to get it right. David Kim walked into the cramped employee break room at Wellington Market location 127 at exactly 9 a.m. Monday morning. Sarah Martinez was sitting alone at one of the folding tables, eating a granola bar with her right hand while her left arm rested carefully on the table. She looked up nervously when he entered, clearly wondering why someone in a corporate suit was seeking her out. "Ms. Martinez? I'm David Kim from Wellington Markets corporate headquarters. I was wondering if I could speak with you for a few minutes about your experience working here." Sarah immediately looked worried. "Am I in trouble? Did someone complain about my work? I know my arm slows me down a little, but I'm still meeting all my targets and my customer service scores are good." "You're not in trouble at all," David assured her quickly. "Actually, I'm here because we've become aware that you might not have received information about some company programs that could be helpful to you and your family." "Programs?" Sarah asked, looking genuinely confused. David sat down across from her and pulled out a folder containing information about Wellington Markets employee benefits. "Sarah, can you tell me what you know about our employee assistance programs?" "I don't know anything about employee assistance programs," Sarah said slowly. "When I was hired, Mr. Rodriguez gave me a brief orientation about my schedule, my pay rate, and the dress code. He said that as long as I showed up on time and did my job well, everything would be fine." "Did you receive an employee handbook?" David asked. "No, I don't think so. Should I have?" David made notes on his clipboard. Every Wellington Markets employee was supposed to receive a comprehensive handbook during their first week of employment, along with detailed explanations of all available benefits and assistance programs. "Sarah, I need to ask you about your broken arm. How did the injury occur?" Sarah hesitated, looking around the break room as if she was worried about who might overhear. "I slipped on some water in the stockroom about 6 weeks ago. It was early in the morning, and someone had mopped the floor, but didn't put up wet floor signs. I fell really hard and hurt my arm cracked." "Did you report the incident to management immediately?" David asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "I told Mr. Rodriguez what happened, but he said that since I couldn't prove the floor was actually wet when I fell, it would be hard to file it as a workplace injury. He suggested that it would be easier for everyone if I just used my regular health insurance to get treatment." David felt his anger rising, but kept his expression neutral. What Rodriguez had done was potentially illegal, definitely against company policy, and morally reprehensible. Workplace injuries were supposed to be reported immediately and covered by workers' compensation insurance, which would have paid for Sarah's medical treatment and provided wage replacement while she recovered. "Sarah, do you know what workers' compensation is?" David asked. "I've heard the term, but I don't really know what it means." Workers' compensation is insurance that covers medical expenses and provides income replacement when employees are injured at work. Your broken arm should have been covered completely, and you should have been able to take time off to heal without losing pay. Sarah stared at him in disbelief. "You mean I could have taken time off and still gotten paid? And my medical bills could have been covered?" "Absolutely. Not only that, but you're still entitled to file a workers' compensation claim now, even though the injury occurred 6 weeks ago. The company will cover all of your medical expenses related to the broken arm, including any ongoing treatment." Tears started forming in Sarah's eyes. "I've been struggling to pay the hospital bills for my emergency room visit. I've been making minimum payments, but it's been really hard with Emma's medical expenses too." "Tell me about Emma's situation," David said gently. Sarah wiped her eyes and took a shaky breath. "Emma is 8, and she has acute lymphoblastic leukemia. She was diagnosed 18 months ago. She's been responding well to treatment, but the chemotherapy and other medications are incredibly expensive. My insurance covers most of it, but there's still co-pays and deductibles and some treatments that aren't fully covered." "How much are you paying out of pocket each month?" David asked. "Usually around $800 to $1,000, depending on what treatment she needs." Some months, it's more if she has complications or needs extra medications. David pulled out another set of forms. Sarah, Wellington Markets, has an emergency financial assistance program specifically designed to help employees dealing with family medical crises. You can apply for up to $5,000 in immediate assistance, and there's no requirement to pay it back. It's a grant, not a loan. Sarah looked stunned. $5,000? Just given to me. That's right. We also have a family medical leave policy that would allow you to take up to 12 weeks off work to care for Emma during intensive treatment periods, and your job would be protected the entire time. But I can't take time off, Sarah protested. I need my paycheck, and I need to keep my insurance. That's the point of family medical leave, David explained. You would continue to receive partial pay during your leave, and your insurance would remain active. The program is specifically designed so that employees don't have to choose between caring for sick family members and keeping their jobs. For several minutes, Sarah just sat in silence, staring at the forms David had placed in front of her. Finally, she looked up at him with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Why didn't anyone tell me about these programs before? I've been working here for 3 years. I've been killing myself trying to balance everything, working extra shifts, coming on my days off, working through the pain of this broken arm. If these programs existed, why wasn't I told about them? That's exactly what we're trying to figure out, David said. Sarah, I need to ask you some questions about your interactions with management, particularly Mr. Rodriguez. Have you ever asked about taking time off for Emma's treatments? A few times, Sarah said. When Emma was first diagnosed, I asked if I could adjust my schedule to take her to some of her appointments. Mr. Rodriguez said that the company couldn't make special accommodations for every employee's personal problems, and that if I couldn't maintain a consistent schedule, maybe this wasn't the right job for me. Did he ever mention family medical leave or any other options? No, never. He made it sound like any time off for family issues would be held against me. He's always talking about how the company values employees who are dedicated and reliable, and he makes it clear that asking for special treatment is not appreciated. David continued taking notes, building a comprehensive picture of how Rodriguez had systematically denied Sarah access to her rights and benefits. But he had more questions that needed answers. Sarah, when you broke your arm, did Mr. Rodriguez ever suggest that you take time off to heal? Actually, he did the opposite, Sarah said. He told me that showing up to work despite being injured would demonstrate my commitment to the company. He said it would be noticed by corporate and could lead to opportunities for advancement. And you believed him? I didn't have much choice. I needed the job, and I was afraid that if I complained or asked for time off, I might lose it. Mr. Rodriguez has made it clear that there are always other people who would be happy to work here, and that employees who create problems don't last long. David asked Sarah to detail other interactions she had witnessed between Rodriguez and other employees. What she described painted a picture of a manager who used fear and intimidation to control his staff, who actively discouraged employees from exercising their rights, and who had created a workplace culture that was completely contrary to Wellington Market's stated values. Has Mr. Rodriguez ever mentioned that these benefit programs exist? David asked. Never. In fact, he's often talked about how employees need to be self-reliant and handle their own problems without expecting the company to bail them out. He says that's what separates good employees from bad ones. At that moment, Rodriguez himself walked into the break room. When he saw David sitting with Sarah, his expression immediately became suspicious and defensive. Is there a problem here? Rodriguez demanded. Sarah, you've been on break for 15 minutes. You need to get back to your register. Actually, Mr. Rodriguez, I need to speak with you, David said, standing up and extending his hand. I'm David Kim from corporate headquarters. I'm conducting a management audit of this location. Rodriguez's face went pale, and David could see the man's mind racing as he tried to figure out how much trouble he might be in. I wasn't expecting a corporate visit, Rodriguez said nervously. If you had let me know you were coming, I could have prepared reports, and... This is an unannounced audit, David interrupted. And I'm particularly interested in discussing your employee relations practices and your implementation of company benefit programs. My employee relations are excellent, Rodriguez said defensively. We have low turnover, good productivity numbers, and minimal complaints. Actually, we've identified some significant concerns, David replied, starting with the fact that you appear to have failed to inform employees about available workers' compensation, family medical leave, and employee assistance programs. Rodriguez looked confused, as if he genuinely didn't understand what David was talking about. Those programs are handled by corporate HR. Store managers don't deal with that stuff. That's absolutely incorrect, David said firmly. Store managers are required to inform employees about all available benefits and to assist them with filing applications when needed. You should have received training on this during your management orientation. I don't remember any training about employee assistance programs, Rodriguez said, but his voice lacked conviction. David pulled out his phone and made a call to Jennifer Walsh in HR. After a brief conversation, he turned back to Rodriguez. Ms. Walsh is checking your training records now. She'll be calling you in the next hour to discuss what training you received and when you received it. Rodriguez was clearly panicking now. Look, if there's been some kind of misunderstanding about procedures, I'm happy to correct it. But I've always tried to run this store efficiently and keep employees focused on their work. Mr. Rodriguez, David said, his voice cold and professional. Keeping employees focused on their work includes ensuring that they're healthy, that their families are cared for, and that they have access to the support they need. What you've created here is a workplace where people are afraid to ask for help that they're legally entitled to receive. David turned back to Sarah, who had been sitting quietly during the exchange. Sarah, I'm going to walk you through the application process for workers' compensation and emergency financial assistance right now. Both programs can be expedited given your circumstances, and you should start seeing support within days rather than weeks. But what about my work schedule? Sarah asked. I'm supposed to be back on my register. Your schedule is being adjusted immediately, David said. You'll be working no more than 40 hours per week. You'll have adequate break time, and you'll have the flexibility to take Emma to her medical appointments without penalty. Rodriguez started to object, but David cut him off. Mr. Rodriguez, you'll be receiving a call from corporate HR this afternoon to schedule a formal review of your management practices. Until that review is complete, you're suspended from supervisory duties. As the reality of the situation sank in, Sarah began to cry quietly. But these weren't tears of sadness or fear. For the first time in months, they were tears of relief and hope. The truth was finally being revealed, and everything was about to change. 2 weeks later, Marcus Wellington returned to location 127, but this time he wasn't wearing a disguise. He walked through the front doors in his usual business suit, accompanied by Jennifer Walsh from Human Resources and a new store manager named Patricia Chun, whom he had personally recruited from one of the company's top-performing locations. The difference in the store's atmosphere was immediately apparent. Employees were moving with less tension, actually talking to each other during quiet periods, and several staff members were wearing name badges that identified them as members of the newly formed Employee Wellness Committee. Marcus found Sarah at Register 3, where she was helping an elderly customer with his groceries. Her broken arm was still in a cast, but she looked healthier and more relaxed than she had 2 weeks earlier. When she finished with the customer and saw Marcus approaching, her eyes widened in surprise. Ms. Martinez, Marcus said with a smile, I wonder if I could have a few minutes of your time? Of course, Sarah replied, though she looked puzzled about why a man in an expensive suit was asking to speak with her. Is this about the workers' compensation paperwork? I submitted everything last week. Actually, I want to talk to you about something else, Marcus said. But first, let me introduce myself properly. I'm Marcus Wellington, the CEO of Wellington Markets. Sarah's face went completely white, and she had to grip the counter to steady herself. You're the CEO? But I don't understand. Why are you here to talk to me? Do you remember serving a customer about 2 weeks ago who asked you questions about your broken arm? A man in casual clothes with a baseball cap. Sarah thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. Yes, I remember him. He seemed really concerned about my situation, and he said something about how I should have more options than I realized. That was me, Marcus said gently. I was visiting this store in disguise to see how things really operated, and what I discovered completely changed my understanding of what was happening in my own company. Sarah stared at him in shock. You were that customer? But why were you pretending to be someone else? Because sometimes the only way to learn the truth is to see things as they really are, not as people think you want to see them, Marcus explained. And I'm glad I did, because it led to discovering that you and other employees weren't receiving the support and benefits you were entitled to. I still can't believe this is happening, Sarah said, shaking her head. 2 weeks ago, I was working 60-hour weeks with a broken arm and drowning in medical bills. Now I have workers' compensation covering my injury treatment. I received a $5,000 grant from the Employee Assistance Program, and I'm working reasonable hours with flexible scheduling for Emma's appointments. How is Emma doing? Marcus asked. She's doing well. Actually, better than well. The reduced stress at home has been incredible for both of us. When I'm not exhausted and worried about money all the time, I can focus on being a better mother to her. And the financial assistance means I don't have to choose between her medications and our other expenses. That's exactly how it should be, Marcus said. No employee should ever have to make those kinds of choices, especially when the company has resources available to help. Jennifer Walsh stepped forward. Sarah, we've completed our investigation into what happened here, and we've implemented several changes to ensure this situation never happens again. All store managers are receiving mandatory retraining on employee benefits and assistance programs, and we're establishing regular audits to ensure compliance. What happened to Mr. Rodriguez? Sarah asked. He's no longer with the company, Marcus replied. The investigation revealed that he had systematically denied employees access to benefits they were entitled to, either through ignorance or deliberate misconduct. Either way, that's not acceptable in a leadership position. Patricia Chun, the new store manager, joined the conversation. Sarah, I want you to know that we've also implemented an open-door policy where any employee can contact corporate HR directly if they have concerns about management practices. You'll never again be in a situation where you're afraid to ask for help that you deserve. I appreciate that, Sarah said. But honestly, the biggest change for me is just feeling like I'm valued as a person, not just as someone who can scan groceries quickly. The new management team actually cares about our well-being. That's the culture I always intended for this company, Marcus said. And I'm sorry that it took me so long to discover that it wasn't being implemented everywhere. Marcus handed Sarah an envelope. There's something else I wanted to give you personally. Sarah opened the envelope and gasped when she saw the contents. It was a letter offering her a promotion to assistant customer service manager, along with a significant raise and enhanced benefits. You're promoting me? Sarah asked incredulously. But why? Because your dedication, work ethic, and positive attitude under incredibly difficult circumstances demonstrate exactly the kind of leadership qualities we want our management team, Marcus explained. You showed grace under pressure, maintained excellent customer service despite personal challenges, and never let your struggles affect your professionalism. Those are the qualities of someone who should be helping to lead others. But I don't have management experience, Sarah protested. You'll receive full training and support, Patricia Chun assured her. And frankly, your experience as a frontline employee dealing with real challenges gives you perspective that many managers lack. Marcus continued, Sarah, your story has already changed how we operate as a company. We've reviewed our policies at all 200 locations and discovered several other instances where employees weren't receiving proper support. Because of what happened here, hundreds of families are now getting help they didn't know was available. I don't know what to say, Sarah said, wiping tears from her eyes. 6 months ago, Emma was diagnosed with leukemia, and I thought my world was falling apart. Then, I broke my arm and felt like everything was hopeless. I never imagined that things could turn around so completely. You don't have to say anything, Marcus replied. You just have to keep being the person you are. That's what made all the difference. As Marcus prepared to leave, he asked Sarah one final question. Is there anything else the company can do to support you and Emma during her treatment? Sarah thought for a moment. Actually, there's one thing. I've met other parents in the pediatric oncology ward who are struggling the same way I was. Some of them work for big companies too, but they don't know about the resources that might be available to them. Would it be possible to create some kind of information program to help families navigate these situations? Marcus exchanged a look with Jennifer Walsh, both of them impressed by Sarah's desire to help others even after everything she had been through. That's an excellent idea, Jennifer said. We could develop partnerships with hospitals to provide information about employee assistance programs and workers' rights. It could help families across the community, not just Wellington Market's employees. Consider done, Marcus said. And, Sarah, I'd like you to be involved in developing that program. Your first-hand experience makes you uniquely qualified to help design something that would really make a difference. 3 months later, Marcus returned to location 127 one more time. The store was bustling with activity, but it was a different kind of energy than he had witnessed during his first visit. Employees were engaged and helpful, managers were visible and supportive, and customers seemed genuinely satisfied with their experience. He found Sarah in the customer service office, working on scheduling and employee support issues in her new role as assistant manager. Her broken arm had healed completely, and she looked confident and professional in her management uniform. "How's Emma doing?" Marcus asked. "She's doing great," Sarah replied with a huge smile. "Her latest tests show that she's responding even better to treatment than the doctors expected. And she loves telling people that her mom works for a company where the CEO cares about families." "And how do you like management?" "I love it. I get to help other employees navigate challenges and make sure they know about all the resources available to them. Last week, I helped a new hire apply for emergency childcare assistance. And yesterday, I worked with HR to get family medical leave approved for someone whose husband is having surgery." "That must be rewarding," Marcus said. "It is. But you know what's most rewarding? Emma and I have started a support group for families dealing with childhood cancer. We meet at the hospital every Saturday morning, and we help parents understand their rights at work and how to access assistance programs. We've helped over 40 families so far." Marcus felt a profound sense of satisfaction as he listened to Sarah describe how her experience had enabled her to help others. This was exactly the kind of positive impact he had always hoped his company could have in the communities it served. "Sarah, I have one more thing to tell you," Marcus said. "The board of directors was so impressed by the changes we implemented after discovering your situation that they've asked me to make employee wellness and family support a cornerstone of our company's mission going forward. We're launching a comprehensive program to ensure that what happened to you never happens to anyone else." "That's amazing," Sarah said. "But you know what? I'm actually grateful that I went through what I did. If my situation hadn't been discovered, you might never have realized how many other employees were struggling in silence." Sometimes difficult experiences lead to changes that help a lot of people. As Marcus left the store that day, he reflected on how much had changed since his disguised visit 6 months earlier. Sarah's story had not only transformed her own life and Emma's future, but had led to systemic changes that would benefit thousands of employees and their families. The broken arm that had seemed like a devastating setback had ultimately revealed hidden truths that needed to be exposed. Sometimes, Marcus realized, the most powerful changes begin with one person's courage to keep going despite difficult circumstances, and another person's willingness to really see what's happening in the world around them. Sarah Martinez had taught him that being a leader meant more than making business decisions and managing profits. It meant ensuring that every person in the organization was valued, supported, and empowered to succeed. And that lesson was worth far more than any amount of money in his bank account. The hidden CEO had entered his store and found an employee with a broken arm. But what he had really discovered was a broken system that needed fixing and a remarkable person whose strength and grace under pressure had shown him what true leadership looked like. And that discovery had changed everything.